Whenever Caleb Thorne looked back on the disaster that had shattered his world, he could never recall a single premonition. If he had to pinpoint one anomaly, it might have been the loss of the small keychain Leo had given him, a trivial thing gone missing that very day. In the year 2105, on April 7th, an officer stood inside a Spartan single-person dorm room, his voice respectful. He informed Mr. Thorne that their flight back to the States would depart in half an hour, and it was time to leave the training grounds. He asked if there was any remaining luggage to pack. Across from him, a slender boy was adjusting the knot of his tie in the mirror. The face reflected back was strikingly handsome, and though youthful, his features held a composure that belied his age. Caleb didn't answer, turning instead to walk out the door. The officer picked up a leather suitcase and a backpack, following him. On the lawn outside the dormitory, several other boys were shaking hands, bidding each other farewell. When they saw Caleb, their conversations faltered, the smiles on their faces freezing. Caleb walked toward the main gate without a glance in their direction, the sun casting a sharp light that made his pale skin seem as cool and smooth as polished marble. One of the boys muttered with resentment as he watched Caleb's departing back, remarking that the guy had taken first place in the Osprey tactical training program yet again. Another boy offered consolation, suggesting it was only because he had been running a fever and wasn't in top form. The first boy lamented that he would be 15 next year, too old for the Osprey program. His friend asked what that meant. The first boy noted that Caleb was only 12, which meant they would be beaten by him for another 3 years. A third boy interjected that it was useless trying to compete with him, calling him a freak. Their voices were not quiet, but Caleb's expression remained unchanged. He got into the black Suburban waiting at the gate, which sped away from the training facility. Half an hour later, at a nearby military airfield, a small private jet ascended into the sky, charting a course for the distant United States. Inside the cabin, against the backdrop of a television news report, an aide organized the stowed luggage. Caleb sat back in his seat and switched on the phone he had kept off during the training period. The screen lit up, and several messages appeared. His mother had texted, saying that after his training, the whole family would go on vacation to their island. She explained that Senator Matthews was giving a campaign speech in Seacliff City, and his father, being a longtime friend, felt they had to attend. For that reason, Captain Wallace would be the one to pick him up. Caleb's eyes lowered to the date on the message. It had been sent yesterday. He put the phone down as the voice of a news anchor drifted from the television. She was speculating whether General Thorne would make an appearance at the senator's speech. Her voice was cut off as Caleb switched off the television, tossing the remote onto the small table in front of him, a flicker of irritation crossing his brow. The aide turned and asked tentatively if Mr. Thorne was feeling unwell. Caleb shook his head. In truth, he did feel a slight discomfort. For the past few days, he had been experiencing sporadic, low-grade fevers that came and went quickly, so he hadn't thought much of them. Now, feeling the warmth creep back, he instinctively raised a hand to his forehead. The aide, adept at reading expressions, inquired quietly before setting down the military-style backpack to find the flight attendant for some medication. Alone in the cabin, Caleb's gaze fell on the black backpack. He suddenly noticed that a keychain was missing. It was a brown, fuzzy ornament, perhaps a bear or a rabbit. He had never looked at it closely. He only remembered its existence when he felt it bump gently against the pack. And with that thought, he inevitably thought of Leo. Leo often stuffed strange things into his bag before he left. Caleb recalled once, during a written exam, trying to erase an answer with a piece of chocolate that looked like an eraser. Another time, under the watchful eye of a combat instructor, He had pulled out a handful of colorful plastic toy swords. He had been furious, but Leo was only 6, so all he could do was scold him, using a sharp tone and a stern gaze as a deterrent. This method was effective on everyone else, who kept a respectful distance from him, but it did not work on Leo. The boy was impossibly thick-skinned. Moments after a scolding, he would be back with his messy curls, trying to get his attention. Caleb could only endure it, choosing to ignore Leo's presence. In a few more years, he would be off to military academy, and Leo would be out of his world for good. He hadn't thrown the keychain away this time, not because he liked it, but because he had grown accustomed to ignoring things, to mostrangi any trace of Leo in his life. The aide returned with medication and a glass of water, asking if the young master wanted to rest, as the flight would still take several hours. Caleb nodded after taking the pills, leaned back, and closed his eyes. He felt the window shade being lowered, the seat reclining, and a blanket being draped over him. Soon, he was fast asleep, lulled by the monotonous drone of the engines. The sun was brilliant. Maria, the housekeeper, finished her chores and hurried back to her quarters, carrying out a comforter to air on the line in the small courtyard. Noticing a dark, damp patch in the middle of it, her face hardened. She asked Leo if he had been drinking water again before bed last night. A small boy of about 5 or 6 stood under the eaves, his hands tucked into the chest pocket of his dark blue overalls. His curly hair was a chaotic mess, and he looked down guiltily, admitting that he had. Maria reminded him that she had told him not to drink water before sleep. Leo, kicking gently at a table leg with his sneaker-clad foot, mumbled that he was thirsty and couldn't sleep, so he only had a little bit. When asked how much a little bit was, he gestured to a full glass. Maria felt a wave of dizziness as she spread the comforter and touched her forehead, guessing another low-grade fever was starting. Annoyed, she snapped, asking what 6-year-old still wets the bed. She warned him that people would laugh. Even if he was thirsty, he shouldn't drink so much before sleeping. Leo said he understood. Seeing that Maria was done scolding him, he asked if his young master was coming home today. Maria confirmed that Captain Wallace had gone to pick him up yesterday. Leo's large eyes lit up with joy, and he bounced on the spot, his soft curls flopping over his ears. Maria turned to him, her expression serious, and warned him not to constantly run up to the young master when he returned, as he was not always welcome. Leo agreed with a cheerful grin, squinting in the bright sun. He spread his arms and began to spin in happy circles. Maria knew his promise was empty but sighed in resignation as she headed toward the main house, calling back that there was a brownie for him on the plate on the table and to wash his hands before eating it. Leo answered while still spinning. His vision blurred into a whirling mix of blue sky, the staff house, and his mother's back as she walked into the main building. He could usually spin for a long time, but after only a few rotations he felt dizzy and stumbled. He reached for the small table to steady himself, but his legs felt like cotton, and after a few drunken lurches, he collapsed to the ground. Leo sat there, stunned, watching the lawn undulate like the sea. The tall, straight lines of the distant buildings bent like wheat in the wind. A deep rumbling sound rose from the earth, like a great beast roaring from its tomb. The ground shook violently. A cracking sound came from above as a slab of concrete broke off and crashed down beside him. Amidst the swirling dust and the deafening roar of collapsing structures, he couldn't stand. He began to crawl forward on instinct. He thought he heard his mother's frantic scream of his name from the direction of the main house. He opened his mouth to reply, but his world went black. The plane was descending. Through the window, Caleb watched the familiar city below. Seacliff City was bordered by the ocean on 3 sides. In its center, one building was particularly striking, a 1,000-meter spire that pierced the clouds. The Seacliff Spire, the city's landmark. Sunlight streamed through the window, coating the boy's fair skin in a pale gold, softening the coldness in his eyes and making his handsome features even more pronounced. The aide asked if they would be heading straight home. Caleb, refreshed from his nap and with the fever gone, confirmed they would go directly home. The plane increased its speed of descent, the landing gear touching the ground with a smooth glide along the runway. The aide stood up to open the overhead compartment. Caleb reached to unfasten his seatbelt. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from somewhere in the cabin, and the aircraft jolted violently. The aide muttered, wondering what was happening and if the runway hadn't been cleared. Caleb instinctively looked out the window, and what he saw made his pupils contract, freezing him in place. The distant airport terminal was tilting at an impossible angle before it collapsed with a tremendous roar, kicking up a sky-high cloud of dust. Through the white smoke, people were running toward the tarmac, but the flat ground suddenly split open with wide fissures that spread like cracks in glass, swallowing them in an instant. Sealed within the cabin, Caleb could hear nothing but his own ragged breathing. Before he could process what was happening, the plane was rocked by another violent tremor. Oxygen masks deployed from the ceiling. The aide shouted for everyone to remain calm, identifying it as a major attack and telling them to stay seated. The plane lurched forward. Caleb watched as the runway and the grass beside it were twisted and torn as if by giant hands. Some parts were squeezed into small hills, while others fractured and collapsed into newly formed chasms. Another loud bang, and the plane tilted sharply to the left. Suitcases fell from the overhead bins, tumbling and crashing against the cabin wall. Amid the screams of the 2 flight attendants, Caleb gripped the armrests tightly, watching as 2 planes parked on the tarmac slid into a bottomless abyss. The aide yelled at him to put on his oxygen mask. Snapping back to reality, Caleb quickly pulled the dangling mask over his face. Following the survival training he had learned, he bent over, tucking his head toward his knees and pulling his legs back. The runway behind the plane was collapsing in sections. The path ahead was warped and uneven. The pilot was likely trying to take off again but couldn't gain enough speed, only managing to stumble forward. White smoke filled the cabin, and alarms blared. The plane tilted several times as if it would capsize, then suddenly veered sharply to the right, careening onto the grass. A massive force of impact threw Caleb forward, the seatbelt biting into him, holding him in place. Amid the terrified screams of the crew, he felt a buzzing in his head and lost consciousness. Leo crouched beneath a table in the pitch-black darkness. At first, he had cried and called for help, but as time passed, his fear gave way to boredom. He picked at the leg of the table beside him. When a sound finally came from outside and light pierced his cramped space, he squinted, his eyes unaccustomed to it. He saw a slender figure silhouetted against the light. A clear voice, tinged with exhaustion and hoarseness, called his name and extended a hand. Leo stared for a few seconds before his eyes lit up, and he whispered, "Young master." He was lifted out, and he wrapped his arms tightly around Caleb's neck, burying his face in his shoulder. Just as Caleb stepped back, another aftershock hit, and the wooden table where Leo had been hiding was crushed into splinters by falling debris. Caleb steadied himself and checked Leo's shoulders and back, asking if he was hurt. Leo shook his head, sniffling. Caleb then pressed on his arms, legs, abdomen, and chest, asking if anything hurt here or there. Each time, Leo reported no pain. Caleb set him down. Leo clutched the corner of his shirt, looking around in a daze. The villa was a ruin. Everything was unrecognizable. He asked tremulously where they were. Caleb's voice was raspy as he explained that they were still at home, but there had been an earthquake, and the house had collapsed. Leo was stunned for a moment, then became anxious. He asked about his mom. Caleb's lips tightened. He said nothing, only raising the back of his hand to wipe sweat from his temple. Leo tugged at his shirt, pleading for his mother. When he received no answer, his voice grew louder, and he pulled on Caleb's shirt, shaking him. He wanted his mom. Where was his mom? Caleb finally spoke, his voice strained. He hadn't seen his mother. Perhaps she had gone somewhere else. Leo stubbornly asked how she could be anywhere else when she had gone into the main house. Caleb's expression darkened. He had walked for hours from the airport without a sip of water, and his throat was dry and raw. His head throbbed, and his limbs felt weak. The fever was likely returning. He had searched the ruins of the main house first, where he had found the bodies of Maria and several others. He had also retrieved the password-protected box his father had hidden in a collapsed safe room. Only then had he found Leo in the staff quarters. In just a few hours, his entire world had been turned upside down. His own fear was no less than Leo's. He was just better at suppressing it. Leo's persistent questions were more than he could handle. He didn't know how to answer, finally saying with frustration that he had not seen his mother. But Leo turned toward the main house, staring at the pile of rubble as if he understood something. Tears welled in his eyes. He broke free from Caleb's grasp and scrambled onto the ruins, trying to push the longest collapsed pillar. He strained, his small, dirt-streaked face contorted, veins popping on his tiny neck. Caleb stood and watched until another aftershock trembled through the ground. Then he rushed onto the rubble, grabbed Leo without a word, and ran back down. Leo struggled in his arms, crying that he had to save his mom. He kicked his legs, trying to slide to the ground like a slippery fish. His strength was unprecedented, and Caleb could barely hold him. Seeing a nearby concrete slab begin to sink, he tucked the boy under his arm and scrambled to safety. Once on flat ground, Caleb let go, and Leo tumbled to the dirt. He immediately got up and ran back toward the ruins, but Caleb caught him by the back of his collar. Unable to break free, Leo turned and tried to pry Caleb's fingers open, telling him to let go. Caleb told him to calm down, pulling him back so he had to look up. He said that Leo couldn't save his mother. He couldn't save her. No one in the world could save her. There was nothing that could be done. Did he understand? Leo did not understand. He insisted he had to save her. Caleb pulled the boy's head against his chest, panting, his voice rough. He told Leo to stop, that he had seen his mother. She was already dead. It was as if a switch had been flipped. Leo instantly stopped moving. Caleb tentatively loosened his grip. The boy stumbled back, his mouth open, gasping for air as if he couldn't breathe. They stood facing each other, oblivious to the intermittent rumbling from deep within the earth. Caleb licked his dry lips, his gaze sweeping over the distance. His expression suddenly changed. He grabbed Leo's arm and pulled him toward the edge of the property. He pushed Leo into a small grotto in the rock garden outside the main yard and squeezed in after him. He hissed at Leo to be quiet when the boy started to speak. Footsteps approached. At least 10 men walked past the grotto. From the gap, Caleb could only see the cold steel of the guns at their waists. A voice ordered the others to search everywhere, that they had to find the box. Security had said the son had just returned. They had to find him, too. The grotto was cramped. The two of them pressed together in silence as a series of aftershocks sent sand and stones trickling down from the cracked rocks above them. A man's voice called out, reporting that they'd found several bodies and asking what to do with them. Caleb felt Leo's body stiffen in his arms and quickly pressed a hand on his shoulder, signaling him to stay silent. The first voice, that of a captain, replied that the dead should be respected and buried on site. But then he paused, adding that something was wrong. 2 boys were missing. Hearing this, Caleb waited for a moment of inattention, then pulled Leo out of the grotto. They crouched low, moving through the shadows of the broken trees. The sun was setting, and their small figures were easily concealed in the dappled twilight. They quickly left the villa grounds. Leo kept looking back. Caleb whispered for him not to look, to keep moving, that they would be found soon. The air was thick with dust and the smell of damp earth. The setting sun filtered through the heavy gray haze, casting a bleak light on the ravaged landscape. The entire neighborhood was silent. The road was twisted, crisscrossed with fissures, and littered with fallen trees. Leo clung to Caleb, following his every step. Occasionally, Caleb would warn him to watch his feet. When they came to a wider crack, he would lift the boy under his arm and carry him across. They didn't use the main gate, but climbed over the collapsed iron fence and entered a wooded area. After stumbling through the trees for some time, they followed a small path down the hill. At the bottom, Caleb knew they were safe for now and stopped, telling him to sit and rest for a moment. They sat on a large rock. Caleb took out a bottle of water, twisted off the cap, and handed it to Leo. Leo didn't take it. His shoulders began to shake with suppressed sobs. Caleb withdrew his hand and took a sip himself. Leo slid off the rock and curled into a ball on his side. His face pressed against the cool ground. Caleb said his name. Leo's long eyelashes trembled. He closed his eyes, a whimper escaping his throat like the cry of a wounded animal. Caleb watched him in silence for a moment, then suddenly stood up and started walking down the hill. Hearing the movement, Leo finally opened his eyes. Through his tears, he saw Caleb's back as he walked away. The boy's straight figure still looked somewhat thin. Soon, he disappeared around a bend in the road. Leo stared at the spot, confirming that he wasn't coming back, and lay down again. A few seconds later, tears streamed from his eyes, running over his dirty nose and forehead. His cries grew louder, raw and heart-wrenching, punctuated by muffled calls for his mother. He lay there, mouth agape, clutching a small piece of brick, tears and saliva dripping onto the rough ground beneath his face. After a while, he abruptly sat up, looking toward the bend in the road, only to slump back down in disappointment. After a long time, his crying subsided, and the surroundings fell quiet. It was a different kind of quiet than usual. No crickets, no birds, no distant sounds of televisions or cars. A dead silence, as if time and space had frozen. Leo sat up, his eyes red and swollen, and looked around. The sun had set, and the last vestiges of light were fading. There were no lights in the distance. A single dog barked somewhere, a long, mournful sound like a wolf's howl. The grief in Leo's heart was replaced by panic. He looked around warily, his voice hoarse as he called out twice toward the road for his young master. There was no reply. Leo sat there, stunned. He regretted not following Caleb. He felt as if he were the only person left in the world, filled with terror and despair. The only person he could rely on now was Caleb. For as long as he could remember, he knew he would serve the young master when he grew up, that he would be with him his whole life. His mother was gone. If Caleb didn't want him, what would he do? Who would he serve? Leo scrambled to his feet and ran. His heart pounded with fear. He had to catch up to Caleb to make him take him along, anywhere. As long as he wasn't left behind. He wasn't watching his feet and fell with a thud. But he didn't cry out in pain. He rolled and quickly got back up, continuing to run. Just as he reached the bend where Caleb had disappeared, he stopped short. In the faint remaining light, someone was sitting on a rock, one leg bent, the other extended, hands resting on his knees, eyes closed. His profile was lost in shadow. He seemed to be thinking, or perhaps just asleep, his eyelashes trembling slightly. Leo's eyes burned. He felt a mix of relief at finding him and a strange sense of grievance and sorrow. He wiped his eyes with his sleeve and called out cautiously, "Young master." Caleb didn't answer, but Leo saw him turn his head in his direction. Leo walked over slowly and crouched in front of him, gently taking the hem of his shirt and slowly tightening his grip, as if terrified he would suddenly run off again. Leo's eyes shone in the darkness, like a lost puppy that had finally found its owner. He called out again, his voice cautious but filled with an undeniable warmth, "Young master." Caleb asked if he was done crying. Leo sniffled, his voice hoarse, and said he was. Caleb patted the rock beside him, motioning for him to sit. He took a bottle of water from his backpack, opened it, and gave it to him. After Leo finished drinking, Caleb pulled out the only 2 military-grade protein bars they had and handed one over. Leo took a bite. It was like biting into a piece of wood, hard and without any of the sweetness of a granola bar. He suspected it might be stale, but seeing Caleb eating his, he didn't dare say anything. Caleb always ate with an innate grace. Even sitting among ruins, covered in filth and eating a dry ration, he managed to look as if he were in a fine dining restaurant. Chewing slowly and deliberately, showing no sign that the food was difficult to eat. Leo was the opposite. He held the bar with both hands, trying to bite it with his front teeth, then his molars, then back to his front teeth, struggling to gnaw and grind it down. When Caleb finished his bar, he turned to look at Leo and saw that he had only managed to bite off a small piece and was now straining to swallow it. He told him not to roll his eyes. Leo mumbled that he wasn't doing it on purpose. It was just hard to swallow. He turned his head and continued to gnaw at the bar with his molars. Caleb watched him for a moment and asked if the bar was really that hard to bite. Although military rations were dehydrated and compressed, making the texture unpleasant, they shouldn't be impossible to chew. Leo glanced at him but didn't mention that 2 of his front teeth were loose. He just took another forceful bite. With a small crack, Leo froze, his mouth open, looking at Caleb with a bewildered expression. Caleb was momentarily taken aback to see a black hole where a front tooth had been. He quickly realized the tooth had broken off. He told Leo to hold still so he could see. Leo kept his mouth open as Caleb carefully removed the fallen tooth and then frowningly examined his gums. It was too dark to see clearly, so Caleb took out a small flashlight and shone it into his mouth. Leo sniffled, his voice now slightly lispy, and asked if he was going to die. Caleb glanced at him and reassured him that he wouldn't die. It was just part of getting new teeth. Everyone gets new teeth, he explained, and at 6 years old it was about time for him. Leo seemed dazed for a moment, prodding the gap with his tongue. Caleb found a small jar of caviar in his bag, something he had salvaged from the kitchen ruins. He took Leo's protein bar, spread the caviar on it with the small spoon from the lid, carefully avoiding the part moistened by Leo's saliva. Leo asked what happened to Captain Wallace, the aide who had come to pick him up. Caleb's hand paused for a fraction of a second. He lowered his eyes and stated that the plane had crashed, and the captain was gone. Leo rubbed his eyes and then asked about his own parents. Caleb replied that he didn't know. Confused, Leo looked at him. Communications were down, Caleb explained, so he couldn't contact them. For now, it was just the two of them. He handed the bar back to Leo, telling him to eat quickly so they could leave. As they were about to go, Leo turned to look back toward the villa on the mountainside. Caleb didn't rush him, waiting quietly. Leo asked if his mom would be cold sleeping there. After a moment of silence, Caleb said she wouldn't be, that she wasn't there anymore. She had gone up to heaven. Leo took a sharp breath, turned his head to wipe his eyes on his shoulder, and nodded. He said that yes, his mom had gone to heaven, where there were lots of good things to eat and fun things to do. And his dad was there too, so she definitely wouldn't be cold. He turned back and instinctively reached for Caleb's left hand. Caleb, who wasn't used to such affectionate gestures, subconsciously pulled his hand back, and Leo missed. But Leo persisted, grabbing the hem of his jacket instead and looking up to ask if they were leaving now. Caleb glanced down at his jacket hem, then looked away and said it was time to go. The profound silence made every sound distinct. Besides their footsteps, there was a dull thudding. It was the cloth bag slung over Leo's shoulder. The strap was too long, so it kept hitting his knees. Caleb stopped, took the bag from him, adjusted the buckle to shorten the strap as much as possible. It was the housekeeper's grocery bag, a large, dark blue canvas tote with Market Basket printed on it. Leo put the bag back on. Now it only came down to his thigh, a much better fit. He looked at Caleb with a surprised grin. It was the first time he had smiled all day. In the beam of the flashlight, though his face was streaked with dirt and his eyelids were swollen, his eyes were bright black, and his teeth shone white. Most prominent was the dark gap where his front tooth had been. Seeing Caleb's gaze fall on his missing tooth, his smile vanished, and he closed his mouth. Half an hour later, they reached a main street. Several fires burned in nearby ruins, casting flickering light on the devastation. The familiar streets were unrecognizable. Most of the tall buildings on either side had collapsed, and large chunks of debris littered the road. Military helicopters roared overhead, their powerful searchlights cutting through the night sky. In the distance, sirens wailed. Caleb felt a strong sense of unreality and paused for a moment. Other survivors they encountered on the road showed no joy at having survived, their faces either etched with grief or numb with shock. Perhaps some had watched their loved ones buried under rubble, or perhaps their loved ones were missing, their fate unknown. The street was treacherous, full of pits and jagged rebar sticking out of broken concrete. Leo held tightly to Caleb's jacket, trying his best to keep up. He knew he couldn't be a burden, so even when he tripped, he would quickly scramble up, grab Caleb's jacket again, and continue walking as if nothing had happened. Caleb wasn't walking fast. After noticing Leo stumble again, he grabbed the back of his collar and lifted him over a mound of debris. Leo mumbled a thank you once he was steady and reached for the jacket again. This time, Caleb didn't let him, instead taking his hand. The child's hand was small and soft in his palm, not clammy or sticky. Caleb found it acceptable. After walking a while, they saw a group of people gathered in an alley to their right, and the sound of splashing water. Caleb led Leo over. The people were crowded around a well, with candles placed nearby. Some were washing their faces, while others had stripped to their underwear and were rinsing themselves from head to toe. The city's water pipes had been shattered, and though the well water was somewhat murky, it was fine for washing. Caleb had Leo stand aside while he went to pick up an empty bucket and get in line. The men waiting for water were talking. One said that at least the earthquake hadn't caused a tsunami, or they'd all be finished. Another corrected him, saying the coastal districts were flooded, but Seacliff city center was on high ground, so unless the waves were hundreds of feet high, They were safe. Caleb, not yet 5'7", looked slight among the men, but his posture was straight and he stood out. Leo stood to the side. Though his face was dirty, it was clear he had delicate, handsome features. A woman sitting nearby with her daughter stared at him for a while before she couldn't resist asking who he was with. Leo turned to look at her and her daughter, who was about his age. Not wanting the girl to see his missing tooth, he remained silent. The woman asked if the person getting water was his brother. Hearing this, Leo glanced nervously at Caleb, and seeing he didn't seem to have heard, he turned back and whispered that he was not. The woman didn't catch it. He repeated, slower this time, that he was the young master. The woman, still confused, asked what he was. Leo didn't answer, turning back to watch Caleb's back, his lips pressed tightly together. He used to follow Caleb around calling him brother, but Caleb never responded and would coldly ask who his brother was. Leo would smile and say that he was his brother. Caleb would just turn and walk away without a smile. Leo gradually understood that Caleb didn't like being called brother, nor did he like being followed. So he started calling him young master and would hide behind the fence to watch him come home from school instead of rushing out to greet him. Caleb had gotten the water and brought it over, calling for Leo. The boy immediately trotted up to him. Caleb took a towel from his backpack, soaked it, wrung it out, and handed it to Leo, telling him to wash his face. Leo spread the cool towel over his face, a comforting sensation for his swollen eyes. The towel had a pleasant scent, and he took a deep breath, tilting his head back, unmoving. Caleb's voice broke the stillness, asking if he didn't know how to wash his face. Though it was a simple question, Leo flinched and quickly replied that he did. He began to scrub his face, as if to prove it to Caleb. He scrubbed so vigorously that his nose and mouth were pulled out of shape. When he thought he was done, he looked up at Caleb, who was watching him silently. He was about to continue scrubbing when Caleb stopped him, telling him that was enough and to give him the towel. Caleb took the towel, rinsed it, and told him to come closer. He began to wash Leo's neck and behind his ears, whispering instructions not to tell anyone their origins or names. Leo glanced at him and said he understood. After washing his face, Caleb used the cool cloth to soothe Leo's swollen eyelids, then began to dry his hair. Leo wobbled as Caleb rubbed his head. He noticed the people bathing nearby and, steadying himself, whispered that they were taking baths. Although it was only April, the temperature felt like June, and it wasn't cold at night. Caleb continued drying his hair, saying that kids shouldn't bathe in this water, that a wipe down was good enough. When he was done, Leo's hair was damp, the curls more pronounced, piled messily on his head. Caleb started patting the dust off his clothes. A pat on the leg sent him stumbling. Caleb pulled him back, lightening his touch. Once he was reasonably clean, he told him to wait to the side. The woman who had spoken to Leo earlier now looked at his clean face and commented to the person next to her how beautiful the child was. The other person agreed, lamenting that he had no adult with him, just an older kid. They concluded his parents must be gone, and what a pity for the two brothers. Leo turned his back, pretending not to hear. Caleb fetched another bucket of water and plunged his entire head into it. Since leaving the villa, he had felt the fever returning, his head growing heavy and dizzy. The earthquake had destroyed Seacliff's airport and roads, leaving him stranded. He didn't know what to do next, and his heart was filled with anxiety and confusion. And now he wasn't alone. He had a 6-year-old with him. The cold water shocked him into a clearer state of mind, and his anxiety subsided slightly. His father's Eastern Command had withdrawn from Seacliff City, but important information was stored in the password box. He had realized immediately after the earthquake that the security systems at home would fail, and the Western Command would surely try to seize the box. For now, he just needed to keep his identity hidden, keep the box safe, and wait for his father to find him. As for Leo, he would take him along if he could. If not, he would hand him over to a relief organization. That would fulfill his responsibility. Leo, worried that Caleb had kept his head in the bucket for too long, walked over and gently pushed him. Caleb didn't move. Leo grew anxious and started to shake him. Caleb suddenly pulled his head out of the water, his eyes red and stinging, gasping for air. He turned to look at Leo's panicked face and said hoarsely that he was fine. After cleaning up, they set off again. As they moved closer to the city center, the number of survivors increased, but the devastation became even more shocking. The streets were clogged with smashed cars, many burned to their frames. A derailed high-speed train had pierced a skyscraper, its body twisted and mangled. Some cars had fallen to the ground. Others still hung from the building. Bodies were everywhere, lying bloodied on the streets or as pale limbs protruding from under rubble. A collapsed government office, which had been crowded at the time of the earthquake, had bodies piled on top of each other. And this was only what was visible. Countless more were buried beneath the ruins. Leo was quiet the entire way, not making a sound, but the hand clutching Caleb's was cold and trembling. As they passed a teetering, half-destroyed wall, a dark shape suddenly dropped from an open window, dangling right in front of them. It was a woman hanging upside down. Her neck was broken and stretched grotesquely long. Her dark hair floated in the air, and dark blood trickled from her mouth, down her face, and dripped from her hair to the ground below. Leo's eyes met the woman's lifeless ones. His heart seemed to stop, his blood run cold. His mind went blank. He heard Caleb urging him to move, but he didn't know how to take a step. Caleb grabbed him under the arms and lifted him aside, his legs dragging like wooden sticks. Once they were clear of the wall, Leo's mouth hung slightly open, too terrified to make a sound. Caleb patted his face, his voice rough, telling him to say something. Leo's eyes slowly turned to Caleb. Then he turned and wrapped his arms tightly around his waist, his teeth chattering. Caleb hesitated for a moment before patting his back gently. A short while later, they continued on. Caleb, not wanting to encounter another corpse face to face, constantly scanned their surroundings, adjusting their route. When it was unavoidable, he ordered Leo to close his eyes, tucked him under his arm, and hurried past. As they entered more residential areas, the number of people digging through the rubble increased. This was the golden window for rescuing survivors. On the ruins of apartment complexes, people called out the names of their loved ones, using steel bars to pry at smaller concrete slabs. With the citywide power outage, those who were better off had gas lamps set up. Others made do with candles. Cheers erupted from their right. Leo saw someone being carried out from under the rubble. The person's right knee was a mess of flesh and blood, the leg of their pants empty below it. There were frantic calls for a tourniquet, for painkillers, for anything to stop the bleeding. The air was thick with the smell of blood, a cloying, suffocating scent. Caleb pulled Leo along. Though terrified, Leo couldn't stop looking back at the injured person, wondering if they would die. A faint voice cried for help. Leo paused. He thought he heard a soft plea. Caleb had clearly heard it too. He stepped over the rubble to their right, moved a door panel, and revealed a middle-aged man lying in the gap underneath. The man, pinned from the waist down by a large board, weakly repeated his plea for help. Caleb stood over him and tried to pull him out by his armpits, but he wouldn't budge. The man gasped that he was stuck. Caleb straightened up, looking for a tool, when he heard a scraping sound behind him. He turned to see Leo dragging a steel bar, longer than he was tall, toward him. He told Caleb it was for him. Caleb took the bar and began prying at the bricks and stones on top of the board. The boy's arms, just beginning to show definition, tensed with the effort, the lean muscles visible under his shirt. Soon, the debris was cleared, but Caleb realized one end of the board was pinned down completely. Without machinery, it was impossible to move. The man in the crevice looked pale and his gaze was unfocused as he murmured for water. Leo, at Caleb's side, relayed that the man wanted water. Caleb, panting, told him to get the half-empty bottle from the backpack and give it to him. Leo quickly retrieved the water and carefully tilted it to the man's lips. Caleb used the steel bar to dig at the ground beneath the man. If he couldn't lift the board, he would dig him out. Leo knelt, holding the bottle, and after giving the man a few sips, he asked why he wasn't drinking anymore. Caleb stopped digging. He looked at the man's face, then reached out and placed a finger on his neck. After a few seconds, he tossed the steel bar aside, clattered as it rolled away, making Leo jump. He looked up at Caleb. Caleb stood up and said it was time to go. Leo, still in the position of giving water, asked in shock what about the man. Caleb replied flatly that he was dead. Leo was stunned, protesting that he had just been drinking water. How could he be dead? Caleb didn't say anything. He found a black plastic bag and draped it over the man's face, weighing the edges down with small stones so it wouldn't blow away. When he was done, he saw Leo still standing there and asked if he was coming. Then he turned and walked away. Leo snapped out of it and hurried to catch up. This was a commercial street. Leo automatically slipped his hand into Caleb's, gripping one of his fingers tightly. After a moment, Leo, his head down, spoke up, asking his young master. Caleb grunted in acknowledgement. Leo asked if that man would also go to heaven. After a brief silence, Caleb confirmed that he would. Leo then asked if all the dead people they had seen on the road had gone to heaven. Caleb glanced down at Leo. He could only see the top of his head, the soft-looking, messy curls. He confirmed that they had. Leo walked quietly for a while, then suddenly declared that his young master was very good. Caleb ignored him. Leo continued, saying that he liked him very much and wanted to stay with him forever, to serve him. Caleb hated hearing such sentimental words. They made his skin crawl. He frowned and told him to stop. Leo asked why. Caleb said it was annoying. Leo protested that his mother loved to hear him say things like that. Caleb retorted that he wasn't his mother. Leo fell silent for a moment, then whispered, "Then don't leave me behind. Okay?" Caleb paid no attention to his words, only raising a hand to his forehead. His brow furrowed in discomfort. After walking for some time, Leo noticed something was wrong with Caleb. His hand was growing hotter, his pace slower. He nearly stumbled even when there was nothing in his path. Leo looked up and saw that he seemed to be falling asleep. His eyes closed as he walked. He warned his young master that there was a rock. Caleb forced his eyes open and steered around the obstacle. Leo led him on, but when he looked up again, Caleb's eyes were closed once more, and he was swaying to the left. Leo desperately grabbed his arm to steady him, crying out for him not to fall. Caleb braced himself against a nearby brick wall, panting that he needed to find a place to rest for a minute. Leo looked around and found a flat stone nearby. He put Caleb's arm over his shoulder and helped him toward it. Most of Caleb's weight was on him, and though it was only a few steps, they staggered. Leo asked if he was tired, urging him to move his feet just a little further. He managed to get Caleb onto the stone, but as soon as he let go, Caleb slumped sideways. Leo quickly caught him, letting his head rest on his own small shoulder. He asked if his young master was just tired and wanted to sleep. There was no response. Leo peered at his face. A nearby shop was burning, and the flickering firelight illuminated Caleb's face. His skin was an unhealthy red, and his lips were dry and chapped. He asked if he was sick. Leo mimicked the way his mother would check his temperature, placing the back of his hand on Caleb's forehead, then on his own. He exclaimed that he was so hot he must be sick. Caleb was semi-conscious, his lips moving but no sound coming out. Leo knew that when you were sick you needed medicine and a doctor, but where could he find a doctor now? He took Caleb's backpack, pulled out a water bottle, and used his molars to twist the cap open. He urged his young master to drink. He held the water to Caleb's lips, carefully pouring it in. But Caleb's eyes remained closed, and the water trickled out of the corner of his mouth. Leo squatted in front of him, looking up at his face. After a moment, he pleaded in a small voice for his young master to wake up, not to sleep. The fringe of eyelashes trembled, and Caleb's eyelids fluttered open. His gaze was hazy as he looked at Leo for 2 seconds before his eyes closed again. Leo watched him helplessly, then leaned in and pressed his forehead against his. Caleb's head was even hotter than before. Even the air he breathed out was hot, burning against Leo's skin. What should he do? He had to find medicine and food for him. He looked around. There was no one in sight. The shop nearby was still burning, and beyond it was complete darkness. He told Caleb to sit there and wait for him, to be a good boy and not run off. He was going to find medicine and food. With that, he ran off. After a few steps, he turned back, took the backpack and tucked it behind Caleb's back for support, and repeated his instructions not to be afraid, that he would be right back. He ran again, into the darkness beyond the firelight, then hesitated, remembering something. He dashed back and grabbed the flashlight. He repeated for him to be good and not afraid, that he would be back soon. Leo hurried through the dark streets. He was reluctant to shine the flashlight to the sides, afraid of illuminating the dead in the ruins, but he had to scan his surroundings, hoping to find a pharmacy. The streets here were even more difficult to navigate, littered with rocks. He had to hold the flashlight in his mouth, using his hands and feet to scramble over small mounds of debris. He hummed a children's song under his breath to bolster his courage, the white beam of light sweeping over broken window frames and stark brick walls. The light would occasionally reveal a limb sticking out from under the rubble. In one room, a body seemed to be stuck in a standing position, staring out from an intact doorway right at Leo. His humming stopped abruptly. A few seconds later, he quickly moved the flashlight away, letting out a sound that was half whimper, half gasp. He stood there for several deep breaths before forcing his trembling legs to move forward. A moment later, his off-key humming started again. He sang about finding medicine and not being afraid of dead people. The flashlight beam landed on half of a sign, and Leo stopped. Though the buildings were collapsed and the street was unrecognizable, he knew the candy-themed logo. His mother had taken him to this shop before. If he could just climb over the pile of rocks ahead, there was a pharmacy on the right. His spirits lifted, and he quickened his pace. But when he reached the pile of rocks, he froze. On both sides were tall, stacked concrete slabs with rebar sticking out. He couldn't climb over them. The only path through was a narrow passage, and lying face down in it was a body. To get through, he would have to step on it. Leo's foot recoiled. He hesitated, then took a step forward. Then back, then forward again. Finally, he didn't retreat. He took a deep breath and walked up to the body. There was a large wound on the neck, a dark, coagulated ring under the pale light of the flashlight. He was terrified. He wanted to turn and run all the way back to his young master. But he was more afraid that Caleb would die without medicine and go to heaven. Though heaven was probably very crowded now, Leo didn't want everyone to go there, leaving him all alone. He couldn't save his mother, but he had to save his young master. He whispered a hello, asking if he could please step on him, then added that of course he couldn't answer. He looked around and continued in a small voice, saying that he hoped he wouldn't be angry, but there was no other way to get through. A gust of wind blew a plastic bag across the ground with a rustling sound. A cat, a survivor of the disaster, sat nearby, its eyes glowing. Leo pleaded for the cat to stay with him for a moment. The cat rose lazily and walked away without a backward glance. Leo took a deep breath and finally, trembling, lifted one foot and placed it on the body's leg. Bracing himself against the rocks, his face pale, he moved forward, apologizing repeatedly. He was sorry, he was a little heavy, he shouldn't eat so much, he was sorry. Finally, through the passage, he hurried on, breathing rapidly. His steps were quick, but his body was stiff. He tripped on a rock and fell hard, the flashlight rolling away. The fall was heavy, and it took him a moment to catch his breath. He didn't get up right away, just lay there, motionless. A gust of wind carried away a soft, choked whisper, "Mama." Leo eventually pushed himself up, picked up the flashlight, and limped toward the pharmacy. There were a few other shops on this street, and people were searching through the ruins. To his surprise, the pharmacy hadn't collapsed, and its door was wide open. He walked to the entrance and saw an adult inside with a flashlight, throwing bottles of medicine from the shelves into a shopping cart. He called out to the man. The man turned, startled, and shone his light on Leo. Seeing it was just a child, he visibly relaxed. The light was blinding, but Leo asked with hope in his voice if he was a doctor. The man ignored him and went back to gathering medicine. Leo asked again if he was a doctor, that his brother was sick. The man said, without turning, that he wasn't. Disappointment flooded Leo's eyes, but he persisted, asking if he could give him some medicine. The man told him to go away, not to block the entrance. Leo flinched, but the thought of the sick Caleb gave him courage. He pleaded again for just a little medicine, saying his brother was very sick. The man finally turned, grabbed 2 bottles from his cart, and tossed them to him. He told him to take the medicine and go. Leo fumbled to catch the bottles, thanked him, and left. He didn't go back right away. He headed across the street. Opposite the pharmacy was a bakery that made delicious bread. He wanted to see if he could find any. When you're sick, you need to eat to get better, not just take medicine. The bakery had collapsed, but after digging through some rubble, he found a sealed plastic bag containing a loaf of bread, slightly squashed. He happily picked it up, blowing the dust off the packaging. Suddenly, a hand shot out and snatched the bread away. Leo looked up, stunned, to see a heavy-set boy, taller than him, clutching the bread and turning to leave. He demanded to know what he was doing, that he had found it. Leo ran and tried to grab the bread, but he was much smaller than the other boy and was easily pushed away, landing on the ground. The boy started to walk off. Leo yelled after him that he had found it, then took a running start and rammed his head into the boy's back. The bread flew through the air and landed on the rubble. The boy fell to his knees, his kneecap hitting a rock hard, and he burst into tears. A woman ran over, asking what was going on, and helped the crying boy up. The boy pointed at Leo, sobbing that he had hit him and stolen his bread. Leo protested that he hadn't hit him or stolen anything. The woman glanced at the bread on the ground and said aggressively that her son never hit anyone, that she had seen him snatch the bread and attack her son. Leo insisted that he hadn't, that he had found the bread first. He bent down to pick it up. The woman stepped forward, demanding that he give the bread back to her son. Leo hugged the bread to his chest. The woman tried to wrench it from him. He curled up, protecting the bread, so she twisted his arm. A sharp pain shot through his arm, and he bit down on her wrist. The woman yelped and pulled her hand back, furious. She yelled about him biting people, calling him a feral, ill-mannered child. Leo didn't say anything, just continued to clutch the bread, not getting up. Some people nearby were watching. The woman was embarrassed to continue fighting over a loaf of bread. She turned angrily, pulling her son away, muttering that it was just a stupid loaf of bread. They didn't need it. His father had just found half a bag of flour, and she would make him dumplings later. There was no need to argue with a parentless brat. The boy, still reluctant to leave the bread, kept looking back as his mother dragged him away. Leo remained crouched on the ground until the woman's angry voice faded. Then he slowly stood up. As he started back, a few claps of thunder echoed in the sky, and it began to rain. Raindrops fell from the dark heavens, washing over the ruins, and muddy water soon flowed everywhere. The flashlight beam couldn't penetrate the downpour. Leo stumbled on his way back, falling repeatedly, until he was covered in mud. He wasn't as afraid of the dead now. After apologizing and stepping over the body again, he found some cardboard boxes and covered it. The fire at the shop was nearly extinguished by the rain, sending up plumes of black smoke. As he hurried past, he saw Caleb leaning against a broken wall, his figure illuminated intermittently by the dying flames. Caleb wasn't a large person, and his head was bowed in his unconscious state, but just seeing him from a distance dispelled Leo's fear. He ran through the rain to Caleb's side and saw that he was soaked. His wet hair was plastered to his forehead. He called his young master's name, breathless. There was no response. Caleb's face was alarmingly pale. Leo held his breath and slowly reached out a finger to touch his shoulder. The fabric of his clothes was cold and wet, and Leo's heart filled with dread. Just then, Caleb's fingers twitched. He lifted his head slightly, his eyes half open, and looked at him. His eyes were bloodshot from the fever, and his dark, wet hair hung over his face, which was devoid of color. But Leo's heart finally settled. His eyes burned with unshed tears as he fumbled in his chest pocket for the medicine bottles, saying that he had found medicine for him, and he would be better after taking it. A brilliant flash of lightning lit up the sky, followed by a deafening clap of thunder. Leo flinched, and the medicine bottles fell back into his pocket. He decided they should find shelter from the rain first. He had seen a bus stop shelter that hadn't collapsed on his way out. He tried to lift the backpack, but it was too heavy, and he toppled backward, rolling on the ground like a turtle. He had to leave it and help Caleb up, saying they should go get out of the rain. Caleb, dazed, let himself be led forward, most of his weight leaning on the small boy. Leo was forced to bend sideways, straining to support him, his small neck stretched out, veins bulging. In the heavy rain, guided by the faint glow of the distant fire, they staggered on. Leo's vision was blurred by the rain, and with no free hand, he could only shake his head like a puppy to clear his face. They finally reached the bus shelter. Leo helped Caleb onto the bench, then ran back into the rain to get the backpack and his tote bag. When he returned, he saw Caleb was a little more conscious, leaning against the back of the bench and watching him. Ignoring the water streaming down his hair, he took out the medicine bottles. The rain-soaked clothes were cold against his skin, and he shivered as he said that his young master should take his medicine. Caleb's gaze rested on the medicine bottles for a moment before shifting to Leo, who was covered in so much mud he was unrecognizable. His lips moved silently. Leo twisted the cap off one of the bottles and tried to pour out some pills, muttering to himself about how many he had taken the last time he was sick. He thought it was one big white one, two small white ones, and one yellow one. But these were capsules, so he didn't know how many to take. He decided they were about the size of the big white ones, so one should be enough. He held the pill and the capful of water to Caleb's mouth, saying that after taking the medicine, the fever would go down and he would be better. Caleb glanced again at the medicine bottles beside him. The names were clear. One was a digestive aid, the other was vitamin C. Leo, thinking he was afraid of the taste, encouraged him, saying it wasn't bitter, and showed him how to tilt his head back and swallow it quickly. Caleb looked down at the pill by his mouth and the small hand holding the water. The child's hand, once soft and fair, was now trembling, his fingernails caked with dirt, his knuckles scraped and bleeding. Leo watched him expectantly, his mouth open in an ah sound. Caleb's eyelashes fluttered. He opened his mouth slightly. Leo quickly popped the pill in and gave him the water, urging him to drink it down and not spit it out. After Caleb took the medicine, Leo put the bottles back in the backpack. He then squatted in front of Caleb, watching him intently, and asked if he was better. Caleb gave a barely perceptible nod. Seeing that he had taken the medicine, Leo reached into his bulging chest pocket and pulled out the loaf of bread. It was crushed, and the inside of the plastic bag was smeared with cream cheese. He tore and bit the package open and held it out to Caleb. He told his young master to eat something, that he would get better faster if he ate. Caleb felt awful and had no appetite. He instinctively turned his head away, but Leo persistently pushed the bread toward his mouth, insisting that he eat. That the medicine was bitter and something sweet would help, and that this kind of bread was delicious. The boy's face was streaked with mud, but his eyes were startlingly bright and black. His wet eyelashes clumped together. Caleb found himself opening his mouth and taking a bite, the faint sweetness spreading through his mouth. Leo moved closer and whispered, asking if he was good to him. He said he was very capable, able to find medicine and food, and that Caleb shouldn't throw him away. He would serve him like this from now on, feeding him. Caleb glanced at him and continued to chew the bread. But the fever was still high, and he only ate a little before refusing anymore. Leo had to eat the rest. Caleb watched him. When he saw Leo finish the bread and start to lick his fingers, his weak voice stopped him. He told him not to lick his fingers. Leo agreed not to. He moved closer to look at Caleb's face and pressed his forehead against his, asking how he was and if the medicine had worked. He wondered aloud why he was still so hot. Hadn't he just taken medicine? Maybe he hadn't taken enough. Caleb shook his head, saying it was enough, that it would take time. Leo realized that was right. When he was sick, it took a few days to get better even after taking medicine. Caleb didn't feel cold. His body didn't feel like his own. But seeing Leo shivering, he forced himself to look around. Behind the bus shelter was what used to be a display hall. Several large display cases lay shattered among the rubble. One was mostly intact, lying on its side, its door half open, the glass unbroken. He told Leo to go pull out the velvet cloth inside. The display case was lined with red velvet. Leo pulled the whole sheet out and brought a large bundle back. Caleb told him to take off his wet clothes. Leo stepped forward and started to undo Caleb's jacket. Caleb stopped him, saying to take off his own clothes. Leo began to undress, but the buttons on his waterlogged corduroy overalls were stuck, and he tugged at them impatiently. Caleb had to call him over and, with great effort, unbutton them for him. The simple act nearly exhausted him. He watched as Leo not only took off his t-shirt and overalls but also started to remove his underwear, too weak to stop him. Leo stripped completely naked and, without being told, climbed onto the bench and wrapped himself in the velvet. Caleb had held on as long as he could. He could faintly hear Leo's voice, muffled as if from underwater. It was so warm, so comfortable. He told his young master he should take off his wet clothes too, that he would help. He vaguely saw Leo, wrapped up like a cocoon, wriggling toward him, before he sank back into unconsciousness. Caleb opened his eyes to a world of white. He shielded his eyes until they adjusted to the sudden brightness. He was in a snowfield. The world seemed to consist of nothing but endless white, with no horizon and no features other than snowflakes swirling in the wind. He reached out and caught a snowflake. The perfect, six-sided crystal rested in his palm, never melting, feeling neither cold nor warm. He knew he must be dreaming, but he felt too lucid, without the usual haze of a dream. Though surrounded by the vast, empty snowfield, he felt no fear, only a profound sense of security, as if this were his sanctuary. He walked aimlessly until he saw something strange in the distance. It was a floating, oval object, like a large cocoon, glowing with a soft white light. As he got closer, he saw that the cocoon's shell was semi-transparent, and there seemed to be a dark shape inside. It was all very strange, yet he felt a sense of familiarity and comfort. He stood beside the cocoon and slowly reached out, placing his hand on its shell. It wasn't cold or hard as he expected, but warm and yielding, like a human body. His palm sank into it slightly, like pressing on the membrane inside an eggshell. He could feel something beneath his hand responding to him, pulsing in time with his own heartbeat. Thump, 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 thump. Caleb stood there, feeling an immense peace. He leaned his head against it and closed his eyes. Leo had a difficult night. Caleb was unconscious and couldn't be woken. It took all his strength to strip off his wet clothes and wrap him in the velvet cloth. Fortunately, the cloth was large enough to cover them both. The fire in the shop finally went out, plunging their surroundings into total darkness, punctuated by the stark white flashes of lightning. Listening to the pouring rain, pressed close to Caleb, Leo felt a growing fear at his stillness. He kept checking to see if he was still alive, placing his hand on his chest to feel for a heartbeat. He had been through so much that day. He was exhausted and sore. His scraped elbow and knee throbbed. Just as he was about to fall asleep, Caleb began to shiver violently, his body convulsing, his jaw clenched tight. Leo had no idea what to do except hold him tightly, whispering over and over for him to stop shivering, that he was scared. Eventually, Caleb grew calm and fell into a deep sleep. Leo, terrified and exhausted, finally slept too. When Caleb awoke, the rain had stopped, and the sun was high in the sky. He first checked his backpack. The password box was still there. His watch showed it was 10 in the morning. The fever was gone, though his body ached. He looked over at Leo, who had kicked off the velvet cloth and was lying naked on the bench, his head completely wrapped in the fabric, only a tuft of black curls visible. If not for the gentle rise and fall of his small, white chest, Caleb would have thought he had suffocated. He started to get up, then realized he was also completely naked. He quickly looked for his clothes. They were draped over the back of the bench, now dry but wrinkled. Leo's clothes were in a heap at the end of the bench, a stiff, muddy lump. Caleb picked them up and shook them. Dried mud fell off in clumps. Leo, dreaming that he was caught in a spiderweb, was woken by a push. He opened his eyes groggily to see Caleb's handsome face. He mumbled something about a spiderweb. Caleb didn't hear him clearly, leaning closer and patting his cheek, telling him it was time to get up. Leo sat up, rubbing his eyes. Caleb, having put on his own clothes, was organizing the backpack at the other end of the bench. He turned to see Leo still sitting there, head down. He told him to put on his shoes so they could go find something to eat. Leo gave a soft rubbed his eyes again, and looked for his clothes. Caleb told him those clothes were unwearable, to just put on his shoes for now. Leo put on his shoes and struggled with the laces, finally tying a loose knot. As he stood up, naked, Caleb draped his suit jacket over him and knelt to button it up. The jacket was huge on Leo, reaching his ankles like a sack. As Caleb shouldered the backpack, Leo, his hands lost in the long sleeves, hesitated and suggested that maybe he should wear his own clothes after all. Caleb turned, saw his ridiculous appearance, and after a moment's silence, said no. His clothes were too dirty. Leo, looking troubled, tried to scratch his face but couldn't get his hand out of the sleeve. Caleb told him to come here. He rolled up the sleeves for him, retied his shoelaces tightly, and looking up at him, asked if that was better. Leo nodded reluctantly. Caleb asked if he was ready to go. Leo said he was. He slung his market basket bag over his shoulder, took Caleb's hand, and they left the bus shelter. Though the sun was bright, the ground was still wet. The rain-soaked dirt had turned into a thick layer of mud that squelched with every step. A rumbling sound came from above. Leo looked up to see a low-flying helicopter with someone sitting on the side, shouting through a megaphone. The voice announced that the Western Command was distributing food and water at every intersection, and all survivors should proceed to the nearest distribution point. As the helicopter flew away, Caleb led Leo toward the nearest intersection, asking where he had found the medicine last night. Leo pointed ahead, saying there was a pharmacy up there. Caleb asked if he had taken the medicine himself. Leo explained that a kind man in the pharmacy had given it to him. He was packing up medicine, and when Leo asked for some for his very sick brother, the man gave him some. Caleb acknowledged this with a nod. As they approached a pile of rubble, Leo moved closer to him and whispered nervously that the dead person was there, and they would have to step over him. But he added not to be afraid, as he had covered him. Caleb looked at the mound in the passage, covered with pieces of cardboard, and paused. He asked if Leo had walked over him alone last night. Leo confirmed that he had, though on the way there, a cat had been with him. He shivered at the memory. Caleb didn't ask any more questions. He shifted his backpack to his front and crouched down in front of Leo, telling him to get on his back. Leo started to protest that he could walk, but Caleb cut him off with a sharp command to hurry. Leo didn't dare refuse and carefully climbed onto Caleb's back. It was the first time Caleb had ever carried him, and he was nervous and felt honored. His mother often said he was chubby and heavy, and worried about weighing Caleb down. He took a deep breath, hoping it would make him lighter. Caleb didn't take the passage but started climbing up the pile of rubble to the left. Even with Leo on his back, his steps were steady. Leo whispered by his ear, asking if he was very heavy, and offered to get down and walk. Caleb shifted him higher on his back and said it was fine, not to get down. Hearing him say it was fine, but not that he wasn't heavy, made Leo even more anxious, and he took another deep breath. Caleb's shoulders were lean, and the collar of his shirt was pulled back slightly, revealing the taut muscles of his neck and back. Leo rested his chin on Caleb's shoulder, thinking he would move if Caleb objected. But Caleb said nothing, so he kept it there. He told his young master sincerely that he was so good, and that he liked him very much. Caleb felt his skin prickle again and told him to be quiet. After crossing the rubble, Leo got down. Caleb raised his wrist and spoke quietly into his multifunction watch, recording his physical condition. It was a requirement from his instructor, and he had never missed a recording. He noted that according to the monitoring data, his body temperature had reached 41 degrees Celsius 105, 8 degrees Fahrenheit, with no medication administered in between. Leo stopped walking. Caleb glanced at him and continued, correction, medication was administered, vitamin C and a digestive aid, which were very effective, and the fever broke within an hour. Leo, satisfied, started walking again. They rounded a corner and saw a long line of people ahead. Leo's eyes lit up as he pointed out they were getting food. Caleb said he saw. They joined the back of the line and moved forward with the crowd. 2 military tracked vehicles were parked ahead, with soldiers handing out food. Each person received 2 bottles of water and 2 loaves of bread. 7 or 8 soldiers, guns at their hips, maintained order. Soon they were near the front of the line. They saw a soldier with a scanner, and each person who passed held out their wrist to have their identity information extracted. In the United States, personal identification was stored in a biochip under the skin of the wrist, which could be scanned to display a person's name and background. A soldier looked up from his scanner and questioned a man, asking why a resident of a different city was in Seacliff. The man explained he was visiting a friend when the earthquake hit. The soldier, looking back at the scanner, confirmed that the man's brother was a sergeant in the Eastern Command. The man, surprised, asked if relatives of the Eastern Command weren't allowed to receive aid. The soldier gave a dismissive, unbelievable line about the Western and Eastern Commands both serving the nation. Then sneered, adding that the man also had a younger brother who had joined the Church of the Ascended. The man's face paled. He stammered that he hadn't had contact with his younger brother in a long time. The soldier's expression hardened, asking who he was visiting in Seacliff and why there was no record of his travel in the database. The man looked around for support, but everyone was silent. The soldier cut him off, ordering him to step aside for further questioning. Several other soldiers noticed the commotion and approached, their hands on their weapons. Leo felt the hand holding his tighten, and he looked up at Caleb. His expression was grim, his lips a thin line. Caleb said one word, go. He pulled Leo, and they slipped quietly out of the line. They walked quickly toward a nearby alley, unnoticed by most, but as they entered it, the nearest soldier happened to turn and saw Caleb's back. At a time like this, no one would leave without getting food. The soldier's suspicion was aroused, and he followed. The soldier reached the alley entrance but saw no one. The alley twisted ahead, littered with debris. He touched the stun baton at his waist, then drew his pistol and peered behind a broken wall. No one was there. He moved forward slowly, gun raised. Leo hid behind a concrete slab, pressed against Caleb, listening to the crunch of footsteps on the other side, not daring to breathe. He knew from a young age that there were 2 kinds of soldiers in the city, Western Command and Eastern Command. When his mother took him out, the Eastern Command soldiers would be polite after checking their IDs, while the Western Command soldiers were cold, and his mother would hurry them away. Though the Western Command soldiers were stern, he had never hidden from them before. Now, with his young master hiding, he sensed that being caught would be very bad. The soldier's voice came from just behind the wall, saying he saw them and telling them to come out. Leo jumped, but Caleb squeezed his hand and shook his head, putting a finger to his lips. Leo quickly covered his mouth with his sleeve. The soldier's voice softened, saying that whatever they had done, the priority was to survive, and that they wouldn't be harmed. A click signaled a round being chambered. Caleb crouched, peeking over the top of the rubble. The movement hitched up his shirt, revealing a sliver of his lean waist. He was coiled like a panther, ready to spring. The soldier sensed something and started to turn, but in that instant, Caleb launched himself forward. Leo flinched but only heard a dull thud from behind the wall, followed by silence. He scrambled out from behind the slab to see the soldier lying motionless on the ground and Caleb standing beside him, looking dazed. Leo called out his young master's name, his voice trembling. Caleb didn't respond. His expression was strange as he looked at his own clenched fist, muttering that he had only hit him once. Leo asked, his voice shaking, if he had killed him. He stood up and kicked the gun on the ground further away. Caleb snapped out of it, saying no, he had just hit his temple and knocked him out. The soldier's radio crackled to life, a voice asking for his location and demanding an immediate response. Caleb's expression sharpened. He told Leo they had to go, that the others would be looking for him soon. He grabbed the backpack and pulled Leo toward the other end of the alley. Just as they emerged, they heard the sound of multiple footsteps approaching from the other side. Leo couldn't run fast, so Caleb grabbed the back of his collar and lifted him, half carrying him as they sprinted. His body was suspended, only the balls of his feet touching the ground. The suit jacket was too big, and Leo started to slip down inside it, only his eyes visible above the collar. Worried he would fall out completely, he pumped his legs furiously, trying to keep up with Caleb, while his eyes darted around. To their left was a row of collapsed single-story buildings. The one at the very end was still standing, though leaning at a dangerous angle. Its front door was blocked, but there was a small hole near the foundation on the right wall, just big enough for one person to crawl through. He shouted to his young master and pointed at the hole. Their pursuers were about to exit the alley. Caleb didn't have time to think. He ran toward the hole and pushed Leo through. Leo scrambled inside, and Caleb followed, immediately reaching back to pull some loose rocks over the opening. The sound of footsteps stopped nearby. Voices discussed where they could have gone. One suggested the lone standing house. Another warned that it looked ready to collapse and they shouldn't get too close. Leo and Caleb pressed themselves against the wall, listening as the footsteps circled the house and stopped at the hole. The rocks blocking the opening were moved, and a beam of light shone in. Then the light was blocked as someone crouched down to look inside. Leo gripped Caleb's shirt, his heart pounding. He watched as Caleb silently took off the backpack, placed it in a corner, and covered it with something. Just then, the house began to shake, groaning and creaking. Dust and debris fell from around the hole. Someone from outside cursed that there was another aftershock and yelled for the man to get back before the house came down. The others agreed, suggesting they might still be in the alley. The man at the hole got up and left, and the light returned. Leo held his breath until the voices faded completely. Then he tugged on Caleb's shirt and whispered that they were gone. Caleb didn't answer. Leo looked at him and saw he was staring up at the ceiling, his expression intense, as if he had discovered something unusual. Leo looked up too, but only saw some precarious-looking concrete slabs. He called his young master's name, confused. Caleb told him to wait, still looking up. The light from the hole illuminated several dark, thin lines on the ceiling. They weren't straight but wound their way across the concrete, in some places embedded in it, as if they were growing there. Caleb asked for the flashlight. Leo opened the backpack in the corner and handed it to him. Caleb shone the light on the ceiling. They weren't cords, but dark green vines with heart-shaped leaves. It looked like devil's ivy. The vines snaked everywhere, even wrapping around several large pieces of rubble. He followed the thickest vine down to a cracked flower pot on the floor, where the roots had grown into the ground. He tried to pull at a vine, but it was incredibly strong and firmly attached, not budging at all. An unbelievable thought occurred to him. Could this house have survived the massive earthquake because it was held together by these vines? But the earthquake had happened in an instant. The vines would have had to grow at an impossible speed. He dismissed the idea as something out of a movie. Still, there was something unsettling about the vines that made his skin crawl. He told Leo it was time to leave. Leo, who had been watching him intently, though he understood nothing, felt a sense of urgency. He immediately turned and crawled out of the hole. Once Caleb was out, he asked where they were going now. Caleb shouldered his backpack, surveyed their surroundings, and said that since they couldn't get food without having their biochips scanned, they would have to find some elsewhere. Leo nodded in agreement, touching his empty stomach, and said it was time to find food and go. He wouldn't ask where. If Caleb said that's what they were doing, he would follow. They walked on, turning right into the central district. Once a bustling area of skyscrapers and bright lights, it was now a picture of desolation. The empty streets were filled with ruins, and broken glass curtain walls reflected the harsh noon sun. An office building had been sheared in half. The lower 20 floors were intact, but the top was gone, its remains presumably scattered in the surrounding rubble. They entered the building. The grand lobby was empty, papers strewn everywhere, and potted plants overturned on the tiled floor. Caleb suggested they check upstairs. On the second floor, they found a water cooler in one of the offices and drank their fill from paper cups. Then Caleb searched the building, and his luck was good. In a locked break room, he found 5 bottles of water, 3 packages of instant noodles, a full loaf of sliced bread, a box of chocolates, and a bag of beef jerky. Leo followed behind him silently, occasionally prodding the gap in his teeth with his tongue. But when he saw the chocolate and beef jerky, his eyes lit up. They sat on a sofa to eat. Caleb ate a slice of bread while cleaning out his backpack. Leo wrestled with the beef jerky package, tearing at it with his hands and teeth, his whole head shaking with the effort. Caleb took the bag from him, carefully avoiding the slobber-covered, chewed-up end, and tore it open from the other side, handing it back. Leo took out a piece but didn't eat it himself. He held it out to Caleb's mouth, offering him a bite. Caleb looked down at his fingers. They were relatively clean with just a little dirt, so he took the jerky. While he chewed, he cleared out the useless items from his backpack to make room for the noodles and water. Finally, he took out the password box and examined it. It was a silver-gray metal box, about the size of a pack of cigarettes but square. Its surface was smooth, with a numerical keypad on one side. He only knew it contained important secrets, but not what they were, nor the code to open it. Leo chattered beside him, asking if he could roll the beef jerky up in his bread. Caleb said he could. Then he asked if he could add a piece of chocolate. Caleb agreed. Leo proudly held up his creation of bread, beef jerky, and chocolate, calling it his magic fruit sandwich and asking if Caleb wanted some. Caleb, unable to imagine what that would taste like, flatly refused. Suddenly, the rumble of tracked vehicles sounded outside, along with a voice from a loudspeaker, growing louder. All survivors were to proceed to the Seacliff Spire for identity registration and entry into the underground shelter. Caleb went to the window. 2 armored tanks led the way, followed by several tracked vehicles carrying soldiers. People began to emerge from the broken buildings on either side of the street. After having their wrists scanned, they fell in line behind the vehicles. Caleb turned back. Leo had stopped eating and was watching him anxiously. Caleb told him they couldn't go. Leo nodded in understanding. He was still wearing Caleb's oversized suit jacket, his muddy feet dangling off the edge of the sofa. The jacket had ridden up, revealing his chubby legs. Caleb looked away, slightly uncomfortable, and said that although they couldn't go now, they could find a way later. But the most important thing right now was to get him some clothes. Leo said he was fine wearing this. Caleb's face was impassive as he said no, he was not. Leo conceded. He turned and saw the password box sticking out of the backpack. He poked it curiously and asked what it was. Caleb considered for a moment before explaining that he didn't know exactly what it was. But his father had told him it concerned the future of the Eastern Command and the lives of many people, so the Western Command couldn't get it. He had also said that if anything happened, he was to protect the box. Leo asked if the Western Command were the bad guys. Caleb said it wasn't that simple, but if their identities were discovered by the Western Command, things would not go well for them. Leo's eyes widened as he asked if they would be killed. Caleb said no, but they would take the box and detain them to use as leverage against his father. He started to explain that with the upcoming presidential election he stopped. With Seacliff City in this state, and no aid coming from other cities, the situation must be dire everywhere. There would be no presidential election. Leo pressed, asking what they could do. Caleb shook his head, saying it didn't matter. They just had to stay hidden as long as they could. He put the box deep inside his backpack and said they would stay here during the day and go out at night. He would take him to find someone who, if he was still alive, should be able to help them. Leo agreed and went back to his magic fruit sandwich. Caleb glanced at him and told him to sit up straight and close his legs. Night fell. They left the office building and headed for a large department store. It was only half collapsed, and there were gas lamps hanging at the entrance with a few people inside. Caleb turned on his flashlight and led Leo to the back, to an outdoor supply store. It was quiet inside. The flashlight beam on the mannequins' faces made them look pale and eerie. Leo glanced at them once and immediately pressed close to Caleb. Caleb, nearly 5'7", took a small-sized windbreaker and t-shirt from a rack. He started to take off his shirt but found Leo clutching the hem of his jacket. He told him not to be afraid. Leo was about to say he wasn't when he saw another mannequin and wrapped his arms around Caleb's thigh. Caleb grabbed some clothes and covered the mannequins' heads. Only then did Leo let go. Caleb put down his bag and took off his shirt, his upper body exposed. The teenager's frame was lean and well-proportioned, with a thin layer of muscle that hinted at a strength beyond his years. He put on a gray t-shirt and a dark blue windbreaker, then held up a few pairs of pants to compare them. As he reached for his belt, he paused and looked back at Leo, who was staring at him, his large eyes wide and unflinching. Caleb told him to go get a pair of shoes from the rack. Leo agreed readily but didn't move. Caleb's hand moved away from his belt. He told him to go get the black hiking boots. He then handed him the flashlight, and Leo finally, slowly, shuffled toward the shoe rack. He picked up the boots and turned, and a dark shape flickered in the corner of his vision. He looked, but saw nothing. But just outside the flashlight's beam, a pair of pale yellow eyes glowed in the dark. Leo screamed, dropping the shoes. Caleb, who had just finished putting on his pants, spun around and asked what was wrong. Leo scrambled to Caleb's side, hiding behind him and pointing, terrified and incoherent, at the shoe rack, saying there was a ghost. Its eyes were watching him. Caleb followed his gaze, but his view was blocked by a wooden panel. He took out his knife from his backpack and prepared to investigate. Leo clung to his leg, pleading with him not to go, that there was a ghost. Caleb pried his hands off, telling him to stay behind him and light the way with the flashlight. Behind the panel, there was nothing but a couple of scattered shoes. Leo peeked out from behind Caleb, still shaken, insisting that he had seen a pair of eyes there. Just then, a dark shape silently dropped from the top of the shoe rack, its sharp claws extended, swiping at Leo's face. The claws were like razors. If they hit, it would be far worse than a simple scratch. Leo hadn't noticed the danger from above. But in that instant, Caleb spun around, his right hand a blur. A flash of silver, a piercing shriek, and something heavy fell to the floor. Caleb twisted the knife in his hand and stabbed down again. The creature was fast, rolling away to dodge the blow, then leaping onto the shoe rack and scrambling into a ventilation duct. Leo, following Caleb's command, had kept the flashlight beam on the creature, even as he cowered. It was a large monkey, quickly disappeared into the vent. Leo shivered, asking in disbelief if his young master had seen it. A monkey. Caleb was staring at the knife in his hand, stunned. His reaction time had been far beyond his normal capabilities. The monkey had been silent, yet he had sensed the danger and drawn his knife in one fluid motion. Leo was still asking why a monkey would attack people. He mentioned a cartoon character, a good monkey named Bouncy, and wondered why this one wanted to hurt him. Caleb, brought back to the present, didn't know the cartoon but understood. He silently picked up another pair of shoes and started to put them on. Leo, still upset, wondered if he was a bad person, since Bouncy the monkey never hurt good people. Caleb finally couldn't take it anymore and said that it wasn't Bouncy, it was just a regular monkey. It wasn't Bouncy? No. Then who was it? He didn't know. Then it wasn't Bouncy. Leo then asked why a monkey was here. Caleb considered this. He suggested it was probably from the zoo. The earthquake must have broken the walls and the animals escaped. A zoo monkey. Caleb suddenly realized that if the monkeys were out, then other animals, including tigers and leopards, might also be roaming the city. Leo asked if he had killed the monkey. Caleb said no. In truth, his first slash had likely disemboweled it, and its chances of survival were slim. But he wouldn't tell Leo that. More people started coming into the store. Caleb finished changing and picked out a spare set of clothes, then took Leo to the children's section. He ran his fingers along a rack of clothes and pulled out a pair of denim overalls, handing them to Leo. He told him to hold them. Leo took the pants, looking at them curiously, and asked who they were for. Caleb, grabbing a yellow long-sleeve t-shirt, told him they were for him. For him? Leo looked at the overalls, then at Caleb, and said he probably couldn't fit into them. Caleb hesitated, asking if he didn't usually wear children's clothes. Leo, watching his expression, said uncertainly that he could probably squeeze into them. Caleb took the pants and held them up to him. They were indeed several sizes too small. He checked the tag. For 1 to 2-year-old boys. He put them back and started again, this time carefully checking the tags and sizes. But when it came to t-shirts, Leo became picky. He liked the color of one, blue like a clear sky, but it didn't have Bouncy the bear on it. Another one did, but the blue was a dark, pre-storm color he didn't like. He didn't want another one because it had the villain from the cartoon on it. Caleb's temple throbbed. Bouncy the bear was a round little character, like a potato with eyes and limbs. He stuffed both shirts into Leo's large tote bag and handed him a third, telling him to put it on and throw away the suit jacket. Leo, who had been so picky, was thrilled to get multiple shirts and happily changed. When Caleb went to find him shoes, he pulled his feet back, shaking his head. He wanted to keep wearing his own mud-caked sneakers. He explained proudly that they were Caleb's old shoes, that Caleb's mother had given them to him, saying he had won first place in a race wearing them. The shoes were still in good condition, so Caleb didn't argue. As they were leaving the children's section, there was a commotion ahead. A crowd of people ran screaming from the outdoor supply stores. Rats were biting people. The scene was chaotic. In the flickering light, Leo saw a dozen or so large rats scurrying around, leaping at people. A man ran out of a store screaming, his right index finger bitten off, blood streaming from the wound. A rat, longer than a chopstick, charged toward them. Caleb had just picked up a metal clothing rod when a small figure rushed past him. Leo, also holding a rod, swung wildly at the rat, screaming that he would kill it. He mostly hit the floor. As the rat was about to escape, Caleb pulled him back and brought his own rod down hard. The rat's insides spilled out, and it lay still. Leo was still yelling at the dead rat, then turned to Caleb, panting, and told him not to be afraid. He would handle the rats. Others were also fighting the rats with sticks and bricks, and soon there was a pile of dead rodents. One man, after smashing a rat, cursed that first it was an earthquake and now even the rats were attacking. Then someone screamed in terror, pointing out how many more there were. The flickering beams of light revealed more rats emerging from the shadows and cracks in the ceiling. Hundreds of them, baring their sharp teeth. Caleb's heart tightened. He grabbed Leo, who was about to charge forward with his rod. He told him they had to go. Others realized the danger and started to run. The rats surged forward, a chittering tide, quickly catching the people at the back. A man was swarmed, screaming as he fell and was devoured. More screams followed as more people were attacked. Rats were closing in on Caleb and Leo. Caleb shoved the flashlight into Leo's hand, shouting for him to light the way and call out their positions. He swung the rod, sending an oncoming rat flying into a wall. Leo shone the light around, yelling, "One over there, one over here, another one over there." Caleb told him just to say left or right. Leo hesitated for a second, confessing that he couldn't tell left from right, then yelled, "That way." Caleb told him to be quicker, so it became there, here, stomach, back there. They fought their way toward the exit, about 100 yards away, where gas lamps provided better light. The rats had completely covered the floor and walls. Some people, covered in rats, stumbled toward the exit. Others had fallen and were being consumed. Even Leo, who wasn't afraid of rats, was terrified by the sight. Caleb tore a gas lamp from the wall, grabbed some scattered clothes, and poured the fuel on them. The clothes burst into flames, and the approaching rats scattered. Caleb, using the rod to hold the burning clothes, yelled at Leo to get out. He then rushed to the nearest group of people, using the fire to drive the rats off them. They were bleeding heavily, but once the rats were gone, they ran for the exit. It was too late for those further back. Caleb retreated toward the door, swinging the flaming clothes to keep the rats at bay. Leo's voice came from behind him about a bench. Caleb turned in surprise, asking why he hadn't left. He was waiting for him. Leo, his face pale, was also holding a burning piece of clothing on a rod. He said not to be afraid, that he would protect him. The rats, fearing the fire, kept their distance. As they reached the entrance, they heard the roar of a tracked vehicle outside. The stainless steel rod grew hotter from the burning clothes, becoming almost impossible to hold. When Caleb saw several Western Command soldiers jump from the vehicle, he threw the rod into the swarm of rats, grabbed Leo, and ran. The rats, unnaturally aggressive, pursued them out the door. A soldier raised a flamethrower, aiming at them and the rats, clearly intending to incinerate everything. Without hesitation, as the flames shot out, Caleb dove to the right. He shielded Leo with his body, feeling the searing heat as the fire roared past. They rolled on the ground, Looking back, he saw the swarm of rats being consumed by the flames, their squeals turning to silence as they were reduced to ash. Caleb sat up, panting, and asked if he was okay. Leo, still dazed, shook his head mechanically. Caleb checked him for burns. A few curls on top of his head were singed, but he was otherwise unharmed. He told him they had to leave before the soldiers finished with the rats and started checking IDs. He grabbed his fallen backpack, and they quickly left the area. After a few blocks, they saw another huge fire ahead, punctuated by explosions. The flames lit up the sky and the distant Seacliff spire. The roar of motorcycles approached, loud rock music blaring, their headlights cutting through the darkness. The road was littered with debris, but the bikes were moving fast. Caleb pulled Leo to the side of the road. The riders were young people, shouting and cheering at the ruins as if celebrating a festival. One of them threw a glass bottle at an intact storefront. It exploded and the shop caught fire. A person, clothes aflame, ran out, frantically tearing them off and rolling on the ground to extinguish the fire. The young people laughed and shouted happy apocalypse. As they sped on, a helicopter appeared, its searchlight sweeping the ruins. A voice from a loudspeaker warned the motorcyclists that they were targeted and to pull over immediately or face severe consequences. The bikers ignored the voice began a countdown. 10, 9, 8, 3, 2, 1. A missile shot from the helicopter, trailing white smoke, heading for the last motorcycle. The convoy was right beside them. Caleb pulled Leo behind a broken wall. The explosion deafened Leo, his ears ringing. He tried to look up, but Caleb held his head down as debris rained down on them. A moment later, Caleb pulled him up and brushed him off. The motorcycles and helicopter were gone, leaving behind another pile of twisted metal. Leo saw Caleb speaking to him but couldn't hear a word. Caleb frowned, rubbed his ears, and checked him for injuries. Leo felt something moving on his leg. He looked down to see a large rat crawl out of his tote bag and drop to the ground. It must have come from the department store and been stunned by the explosion. It staggered forward drunkenly. Caleb ignored it, but Leo rushed over, picked up a rock, and smashed it. Because he couldn't hear, his voice was unnaturally loud as he declared that he would handle the rats. Caleb came over and massaged the pressure points by his ears. He asked where they were going now. Caleb thought for a moment and said they were going to the 2nd Battalion to find the person who could help them. He explained that he was one of his father's men who hadn't evacuated Seacliff, and he was going to try his luck. Leo, still unable to hear clearly, asked what? Several times. Caleb, tired of repeating himself, just said, "Go." This time Leo heard. They continued on. The shop set on fire by the bikers burned freely. No one was putting it out. On the side of the street, illuminated by the fire, stood several strangely dressed people in long robes, holding signs with symbols on them. Seeing Leo looking, one of them shouted that this was a divine sign, that God was calling them to the holy temple of the Ascended. Caleb turned Leo's head away and led him on without looking back. Leo, after trying to hold it in, finally asked what the Ascended was. Caleb, looking straight ahead, explained it was a cult. What was a cult? A very evil church. What was evil? Caleb recited what his father had told him. The Western and Eastern commands were rivals, but the Church of the Ascended was their common enemy. Its followers were anti-human, violent, and insane. Leo processed this and rephrased. The Eastern command was Bouncy the Bear, the Western command was the cartoon villain, and the Church of the Ascended was the dark sorcerer. He understood now. He then asked if those people were dark sorcerers. Caleb said no, they were just fanatical followers. Leo muttered, confused, that he couldn't believe anyone would like the dark sorcerer. The person Caleb was looking for was Captain Anderson, nominally a captain in the Western Command, but actually a secret operative for the Eastern Command. Caleb knew this because he had accidentally walked in on his father, General Thorne, meeting with Anderson in secret. The United States was a federation of 5 member states, with the 2 largest, the Eastern and Western Commands, holding most of the military power. They had once gone to war, nearly breaking the nation apart. They had since reached a truce, with the major cities divided between them, and Seacliff City jointly occupied to maintain a balance of power. Just before the now-cancelled presidential election, the 2 commands had apparently reached some agreement, and the Eastern Command had temporarily withdrawn from Seacliff. No one knew for how long. Before the earthquake, the 2 forces had maintained a veneer of civility. But now, without any oversight, that pretense was gone. The city was crawling with Western Command soldiers. Caleb's only hope was to find Captain Anderson and have him find a safe place for them. He couldn't openly ask for him, but Anderson was a captain in the 2nd Battalion. If he was alive, Caleb might find him near their base. The 2nd Battalion headquarters wasn't far. A few streets later, they arrived. The high walls that used to surround it were gone.